All right. My name is Ellen Miles. I'm the Programming and Outreach Coordinator at the Camas Public Library, and you are watching our local author chat. I am so excited tonight to bring you to our small screen, Ellie Alexander. Thank you so much, Ellie, for coming and joining me tonight for our chat.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Great, great. Well, I have a little intro that I'm going to read about you, and then I have some questions, and it'll all be pretty fun and casual. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Ellie Alexander is a Pacific Northwest native who spends ample time writing and testing a multitude of pastry and other recipes in her home kitchen or at one of the many famed coffee houses nearby. When she's not coated in flour or hard at work on the next book in one of her cozy mystery series, you'll find her outside exploring hiking trails, trying to burn off calories consumed in the name of research. So that whole description made your job title sound amazing, and I'm jealous you get to do all of that.
Right.
Okay, so my first question is like super generic and easy. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
For sure. Yes. So it's true. I am a Pacific Northwest native. I grew up in Vancouver, Washington, just right next door to Camas. Although back in those days, Camas was not the Camas it is today, of course. It's come a long way. And I think my writing and my baking experience predisposed me to writing cozies. I wrote my very first mystery in second grade, which I still have a copy of today. I have to say my penmanship in second grade was much improved than my scribble of a signature today.
Oh, wow.
But basically it was like an early cozy. It was titled The House on the Haunted Hill, and it involved two young girls who go off on a bike ride and they find a haunted house, and their bikes break down. They go in the house and there are cobwebs sweeping across their face. So there were all these like, sort of spooky details, but not really any plot in my second grade mind.
Yeah.
And basically they explore the house, they sleep overnight, and then the next morning they find bicycle repair kits in the basement and ride off happily ever after.
I mean, for second grade, that's brilliant writing. That is fantastic, I have to say. Well, it's been upwards from there, right?
Right. But I do think that's like the building bones of the cozy, really, because that's, the cozy, they're probably not going to keep you up at night. The focus is more about community and food and relationships and the puzzle of the mystery, but less so the focus on CSI and blood and guts. And I grew up coming to the library every week and going home with a stack of Agatha Christie's because my mom was such an Agatha lover, and my dad taught honors English and Shakespeare in particular. So he would have me reading all the classics. So I think I had this very kind of eclectic reading experience, and their baking styles were the same. My mom was like your classic Betty Crocker, like anything she made tasted delicious, but they wouldn't necessarily be like Instagram or Pinterest perfect cakes, like lopsided. And whereas my dad, when he bakes, will bake like a beautiful 8-layer apricot chocolate torte where he hand pipes on the frosting and makes his own marmalade. So yeah.
I mean, those both sound delicious. As long as it tastes good, I'm happy. So
yeah, exactly.
Wonderful. Okay, well, my second question is more about in a literary bent. And so what was it like to write your books?
Yeah, I love this question. I think the process of writing for me is so immersive, and almost the word that always comes to mind is really therapeutic. I have always had a very active imagination, and I think in my teen and early 20s, harnessing that was difficult. And so I've always struggled with anxiety. But in my late teens and early 20s, I was plagued by panic attacks, like real deep anxiety. And I think it was because I could tap into sort of any worst case scenario and run with it. And once I discovered writing, it was a way to really harness that energy into something positive. So when I'm working on a book, I'm fully in that world. Like, right now I've just finished Bake Shop 16. And so I'm looking at all these delicious pictures of cakes and pastries and Ashland and Shakespeare. I create playlists. So I have a Jules playlist that I listen to. I have a Bake Shop candle. So I feel like when I'm writing, I'm not only building a world, but I'm like physically in that world.
Oh, that's so smart. That's great. It's very immersive just for you as the writer.
Yeah.
Great. Oh, I love that.
And then, I'm not going into like, oh, all those worst case scenarios, which was good in the pandemic.
I bet. All right, next question. I'm curious about how you can either look at this as like, how did you get your first book published, or how do you just get your books published in general?
Yeah. So I think that's a great question. For me, my experience was that my first book was a memoir, and that book was totally a different process. But then when I started writing mysteries, I think one of the most important things that a new writer can do is just do as much work as you can and learn as much as you can in the craft. So I went to every mystery writing convention and I checked out every book from the library on how to write a mystery. And I worked with a mentor teacher, and I spent 4 or 5 years writing the first book. And then I did a lot of work researching agents because I had read so many cozy mysteries. I had that in like the back of my head, almost like, muscle memory of, oh, okay, I know how this works. So then I was really strategic and targeting agents whose books they were representing authors whose books I loved. And my very first mystery series, which I wrote as Kate, those are the Pacific Northwest mysteries, those were set in Portland. Right when Portland was sort of starting to like gain some national attention, the New York Times had done a piece about how Portland was the place where young people were coming to retire. Right?
Yep, I remember that.
And so I think sometimes it's also having the right idea at the right time. I was really lucky. I went to the Pacific Northwest Writers Mystery convention, and I pitched the book to like 5 agents, and I had multiple offers within a week.
Wow.
But I had done all of that work ahead of time. So it wasn't just like, I was sort of randomly querying agents. I was very thoughtful and strategic about who those agents were. I knew what they were wanting to represent. And then I think it was kind of the right idea at the right time. And the one other thing that I always like to say to writers is sometimes the book that you have in this moment might not be a match for what's happening in the publishing market. But that doesn't mean that you should discard it. I had a friend who, at the same time that I was pitching and got my first agent, she had written this witch themed book, but Twilight had just happened. And so, agents and editors weren't buying a lot of that. Well, right now it's hot again. So, the market kind of goes in trends too.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but that makes perfect sense. Yeah. All right, next question. Has there been anything that has surprised you about the whole publishing process?
So many things have surprised me about the whole publishing process. I think the one thing that has surprised me the most is how many people touch my book before it ever makes it onto library shelves. And that always makes every book stronger. So I will edit the book 2 or 3 times, and then I send it out to a group of early readers, and they give me feedback. My dad, the Shakespeare prof, still edits with his red pencil all of my manuscripts. But then at the publishing house, my editor will do a first look through, and then it goes through a round of copy edits and page proofs and then publicity. And I don't think I realized prior to writing professionally and working with big publishing houses how many people are involved. And then, even after the book is in galley format, there's a whole sales and distribution team and library partnerships. And it still to this day gives me chills to think like there are so many champions of my book just within the publishing house. Like I never imagined that.
Oh, that's great. A whole team in your corner rooting for you.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Great. All right, next question. And you mentioned this a little bit earlier. You already gave out a little piece of advice, but what's a piece, just a piece of advice you would give some aspiring authors?
I think the most important thing that you can do if you are an aspiring writer is to embrace the mess, just the awfulness of what initial writing looks like. I literally have a stack of first drafts that will never see the light of day. And these are all books that never became books. They were all the ideas of books. I would have like an initial idea and start and stop and not know where a story was going, but that's all practice. And I think, if you think about in any other profession, if you want to become a doctor, you're going to medical school and you're doing all those years of residencies, or a baker who's going to be like, having kitchen fails. The same is true for writing, but I think we put so much pressure on the idea of like the first thing that I write has to be perfect. Usually the first thing you write is not going to be perfect, and it should be a mess. But once you get that first mess out, then you can start fixing it and making it better and making your writing stronger. Yeah, so taking away the idea of perfection, I think, is the key.
That's great. That's really good advice. And that probably is applicable to like all parts of life too. So that's great. All right, let's see here. Okay, so this next question is fun. What is one of your personal favorite books that you would recommend to everyone?
Oh, my go-to book that I always recommend to everyone is The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society.
Yep.
It's a book about like, if you love books, if you love connection and food, it's historical, it has some romance. Like, I don't think I've ever recommended that book to anyone and not had them fall in love with it.
Great. Yeah. I'm ashamed to say I haven't read it yet, but it's been on my list for a long time. So maybe this is the inspiration I need to go out and actually get it from the library and read it. So.
Yeah, but as a librarian, oh my goodness, you like.
It's true. The old adage, so many books, so little time, like really is true. All right, I have a couple of little short questions from the audience, from people who wrote in early. So Davis from Camas wants to know, does writing give you energy or tire you out?
Oh, that's a great question, Davis. 100% gives me energy. I have a pretty rigid routine. So I write 2,000 words every day, 5 days a week.
Wow.
Yeah. Monday through Friday. I take the weekends off. It's so cellular now. Like, I know at 8:30, I'm going to be here at my desk, and probably by 2, I'm going to hit my word count. And then I'm energized for the rest of the day. I always start my morning with a walk, because I think there's something about like movement that gets your creative energy flowing. But yeah, writing definitely fills me up 100%.
Great. Thanks. All right, next question. Ava from Washougal wants to know, how do you select the names of your characters?
Ooh, hi Ava. That is another great question. The names of the characters it was easier earlier on. Like I said, I'm working on Bake Shop 16 now. And so at first it was a lot easier. Now I'm like, have I used that name before? Ooh, does that name sound too much like another name? One of my pet peeves as a reader is if character names are too similar, because you don't want to be confused. So when it comes to the main characters, like for my Bake Shop Mysteries, Juliet, like she had to be Juliet because it's Ashland and Shakespeare. For my Leavenworth series, Sloane was a nod to one of my degrees in speech therapy. So I worked in speech therapy early on for the ESD for many years. And Sloane was the first student on my caseload. So that's sort of a nod to that. But anymore, I'm usually begging people for names. If I run into somebody who has an interesting name, I'm like, can I please use that? So
That's great. So at this point, I want to give you an opportunity. Like, how can people find you and find your book?
Yes. So you can find me on my website, which is elliealexander.co. It really is .co, not com. And from there, you can find me everywhere. I'm on all of my social channels are linked there. And I really love engaging with readers on social. So please come follow me and we'll chat books.
Great. And how can people find your books?
They can find my books at any of their local libraries.
Woo!
support your local library, and then of course anywhere books are sold.
Excellent. Excellent. Great. Well, I wanted to ask, would you read an excerpt from your book or any of the books?
Yes, I just got the new book, The Cure for What Ails You. So I thought I would read you a little intro to that.
I was hoping you would pick that one. Yay.
It's awesome. Of course, I need my reading glasses now for this. I've hit that stage, the little.
Yeah. Me too.
This series is set in Leavenworth, Washington, at a brewery, and features Sloan, a female brewer in town, who has a penchant for hops and murder.
All right.
The scent of citrus enveloped the brewery as I dumped a bucket of lemon drop hops into the brew. The new hop varietal had become an overnight sensation, with its notes of lemon, mint, melon, and green tea. Garrett Strong, my brewing partner, and I were using the new style of hops to enhance the fruit profile of one of our spring ales, the Lemon Kiss. Our first batch of the light and refreshing beer had been a huge hit. It was unlike anything we had brewed to date, thanks to the unique hop profile. In addition to the lemon drop hops, we had added two of the most popular varietals in the region, Calypso and Lotus, along with lemon zest and fresh squeezed lemon. The result was a bright and tangy IPA that reminded me of sipping iced lemonade on the back porch. It was perfect for spring. The only problem was keeping it on tap. Luckily, we had planned ahead for this weekend's Mayfest and brewed enough for our tourist crowds that would pack into the village for the traditional maypole dance, sip and stroll, chainsaw carving, fun run, and outdoor spring markets. I knew that I was biased, but there really wasn't a bad season to visit Leavenworth, Washington. Our charming version of Bavaria, tucked into the northern Cascades, was worth the trek through the Snoqualmie Pass in the dead of winter, when everything was draped with crystalline blankets of white. The trip through the winding, narrow passage with spring in full bloom was the stuff of dreams. I had recently moved into town after years of living in a farmhouse with a small hop field on the outskirts of the village. Not a day passed that I didn't feel a deep sense of gratitude for my decision to move. My commute to work now involved a short walk past the miniature golf course and rows of German-inspired buildings with their sand and limestone walls, tiled roof lines, half timber framing, and balconies with window boxes overflowing with trailing geraniums and ivy. No restaurant, delicatessen shop, or hotel spared any expense when it came to the colorful floral displays for Mayfest. The abundant blooms dripped like a cascading waterfall from one story to the next. Nitro, the nano brewery where I had been working for nearly a year, sat just off Front Street, the main thoroughfare. I loved the scent of the boiling grains and working up a sweat on brew days, and today was no exception. Garrett and I had gotten an early start. Mayfest activities kicked off later, which meant the tasting room would be buzzing with activity by early afternoon. With that deadline in mind, I turned my attention to the brew and used a large metal paddle to stir the hops. Garrett tugged off a pair of rubber boots, placing them on a shoe rack next to the stainless steel tanks. He had finished hosing down the equipment. Prior to learning the trade myself, I had always thought brewing was simply like baking or cooking, where you mixed a few ingredients together. But I had come to understand it was so much more. At least 75% of our time in the brewery involved cleaning. Oh man, it smells amazing in here, Sloan. I think this batch is going to be even better than our first round, he said with a crooked grin. That tended to be true. Garrett, like many brewmasters, took meticulous notes during each stage of the process, from how long to steep the grains and the hop to yeast ratio. There was no way to identically craft the exact same beer each time. Often in the second and third iteration of a beer, we would make minor adjustments to pull out specific flavors or reduce bitterness. It was a constant tweaking, and one of the reasons that brewing had turned into my dream job. It might have been hard physical labor, but it was never boring.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. It's so beautiful and evocative. I love it. And if you'd like to read more, you can find that book in your local library.
That's right.
Well, Ellie, thank you again so much for joining me tonight. And I wish you all the best with your new book. And I can't wait to hear the rest of the story.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a true delight.
Excellent. Excellent. Good night.
Good night.